Welcome to Bring Home the Bacon, the podcast that dives into the journeys and strategies of successful entrepreneurs. Hosted by Alan Bennett, let's uncover the secrets to their success.
Welcome back to Bring Home the Bacon. This is a podcast about entrepreneurship, and I am your host, Alan Bennett. Today's guest is Clinton Bennett. No relation that we know of, but we have a great conversation today around entrepreneurship and how he got started in his business. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Alan.
So we had a short conversation about we're not related, and Bennett is not a very common name. It's not like Smith or Jones, but it sounds like we both grew up in a rural area and agriculture was a part of how we grew up. So when your journey, and I always like to start with, let's talk about how entrepreneurial bug bit you, how that all started for you. Was it where you grew up? Did it happen later in life? How did that start for you?
Yeah, I haven't really thought through that completely, but yeah, it started from, it's just been a part of me for as long as I can remember. My grandfather, my dad's father, was very influential on me. I grew up in Pocahontas, Arkansas, Northeast Arkansas. For all of my life, my family was in the farming business. My grandfather had a pretty tough upbringing, kind of post-Depression era type story, and found his way into the farming business after having a few different occupations, but it ultimately ended up in the farming business. So he was in the farming business prior to me being born, and then as I was born, my father, that's really all I knew of, was my dad working in the farming business. So I grew up, in a small town, Pocahontas, about 6,000 people. There were a few manufacturing plants, but for the most part, people they were all entrepreneurs. I mean, it was a small town with small business people, and everybody kind of ran their own business. And all I knew that our family was in the farming business. So there just really wasn't ever a thought for me of getting a job outside of agriculture. I mean, my mother, who was from a military family and lived all over the world, went to great lengths to expose me to other parts of the world. I was fortunate enough to go on trips to New York and snow skiing and space camp and you name it. She made sure that I was exposed to things other than Northeast Arkansas as a child and as a teenager. But really, my passion was always for farming, and maybe not even the farming, maybe I didn't realize this at the time, but small business. So yeah, I guess it's just been my reality since day one is that you kind of work for yourself.
So let's talk a little bit about after you graduated high school. Where was your path after high school? Did you stay in Northeast Arkansas? Where did you go?
I went to the University of Arkansas. It was interesting, through high school, I did pretty well in college. And so I was, kind of thought about, well, maybe I'll go away to college, even thought about a military academy for a little while. But ultimately, as I matured through my teenage years, it kind of became apparent to me that all I really wanted to do was farm. I enjoyed farming. I saw immense opportunity there. It was very satisfying. It's funny, one of the things I struggle with now as a commercial real estate broker is your work never really ends. But as a farmer, you'd plant the crop, you'd grow it, you'd harvest it, and you could kind of step back and go, job well done. Or maybe not, but at least you kind of reached a completion point. I miss that with what I do now. So it became apparent to me that's what I wanted to do. My mother, fortunately for her influence, I didn't always agree with her, but she said, you're not staying at home. You're getting away from Northeast Arkansas. If you want to work in the family business, you're going to have to go do something else, prior to us kind of bringing you in. So I wanted to go to Arkansas State University. She said, no, it's not far enough away. Like, you can go to the University of Arkansas. So I went to the U of A for 4 years, had a great time, loved it, met many, many great friends. And ultimately, that's kind of led me back to, who knew the story at the time. But that's, my experience at University of Arkansas is ultimately what led me back to, now lived in Northwest Arkansas for 20 years. But I made some great friends but through that whole experience, you know, it was every semester I was like, man, I want to go home and farm. And they were like, well, you can come home, but you're not going to have a job if you don't have a college degree. So I stuck it out, graduated, and ultimately, despite everything I've said about wanting to get in the farming business, I am a very independent person. And so when I got my degree, I got into a kind of a side business of farming, the land leveling business. I think you understand it, Alan. A lot of people wouldn't be familiar with it, but if you're growing rice, it's very important that your farm be level, because you flood the fields, and so water control and irrigation control is a very important part. And you can't have a hilly field and a rice farm. So there's a business ancillary to farming, leveling farms. And I out of college, that I saw an opportunity to get into that business. I'd been exposed to that through my high school years. It's a pretty capital intensive business, and I kind of worked out a deal with my father. He co-signed on a loan for a piece of equipment, a few pieces of equipment, and he kind of said, you'll never pay the first year of this stuff. And but we had a great relationship. He was an encouraging guy, but he also was kind of a realist, and that was a tough business. He said, you'll never pay for the first round of this stuff, but if that's what you really want to do, I'll help you get started. And so after the first year, I actually I graduated from the University of Arkansas, moved to Jonesboro, because, despite everything I'm saying about farming, I wanted to get into farming, but I also wanted to kind of chart my own course a little bit. And so I had this opportunity to work on a big project, leveling a big farm. And so I bought this equipment, moved to Jonesboro, was working outside of Jonesboro on a farm, had a pretty successful year, and was planning to buy more equipment. And at that point, my dad said, hey, listen, rather than spending more money on this equipment, why don't you come farm with me? Which was, really kind of what I wanted, was him to ask me into the business rather than me asking him. So that was probably 1997, and got in the farming business with him in 97, and then farmed until 2002, and then ended up in graduate school in Fayetteville 2003.
So what prompted you to go to get more education?
Well, there's a lot of difference between your dreams when you're 18 and 20 and 22, and when you're 24, 26, 28. What I realized is I loved my hometown, still do. But when I moved back there, it started to dawn on me, how entrepreneurial I was. I had big dreams, big aspirations. They were kind of like, what I started to recognize is, farming. Well, there are a lot of layers to this, but farming is a really capital intensive business. It's a really, really difficult business. I'd like to think I was very good at it. I had great opportunities to get into it. I think we were doing by all metrics, we were doing a great job. But I was looking at it and I was like, we're not making that much money. And, my dad and I had formed a business entity that rented land from him and from others. So we were paying rent to them. Well, I was looking at it, I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to afford to buy a farm of my own by farming. And so it just kind of dawned on me that it's like, man, this is a lot of work and a lot of risk, and not really that lucrative. And it's not going to I just saw myself kind of creating a job for myself. And at the same time, I was facing the reality of living in Northeast Arkansas for the rest of my life, which, parts of that are fantastic. At 28, I was kind of ready to get out and do other things. But now at 50, it wouldn't bother me to be back there. I mean, so I'm not trying to say bad things about small towns. I love them. But at that point in my life, I kind of felt like I needed to change. And there was another kind of interesting chain of events that happened. Rice farming, really, you work hard from March till late October, November, and then you're just kind of off for a while. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes on, but because I was working with my dad, my sister had moved to Colorado. I was working hard, 9 months a year, 10 months a year. So as soon as we got done, I was like, hey, I'm moving to Colorado. So I had 3 winters where I lived in Colorado for about 3 months, and drove a shuttle van and worked on a ski slope and worked in a ski shop and worked in a restaurant, did all kinds of little jobs, and I loved every one of them. If I could have survived on hourly wages, I'd still be out there. And really went to graduate school with plans to move to Colorado. But once I got into graduate school at the U of A, I just never, I met my wife and kind of recognized how powerful my network was from undergraduate. Kind of had some inkling or could kind of see a little bit of what was happening in Northwest Arkansas. So I kind of stayed on that course. But really the light switch that went off for me was after my 3rd winter, being in Colorado. I drove back from Colorado, and this sounds like I'm embellishing this part of the story, but I'm not. All these thoughts have been swirling in my head. And it's still, late February, early March, and I'm driving back to get ready to put in another crop and borrow, I don't know, $500,000 or whatever we borrowed at the time to make it. And, I walked in the back door of my house and I set my bag down. And I just kind of looked around. I was like, my last year, I'm going to make a move. And, fortunately, my dad, he's a great guy. He passed away in 2017, but we had a great relationship. And I said, Dad, I said, I think this is going to be my last year farming. And he was like, well, good for you. If I was 28, I think he goes, I admire you for trying something different. He said, you're going to have to chart your course for sure on your own. Like, I was able to give you a little bit of a safety net here. He said, that's not going to follow you. He said, but I admire you for doing it and more power to you. So, my parents really supported me kind of transitioning out of that business. I think I was fortunate that I ended up, the University of Arkansas at that point in time had just gotten their first kind of $1 billion injection from the Waltons. So the business school was really humming at that point in time. So it worked out really well for me to transition out of farming into graduate school. Really didn't know for sure what I was going to do at that time. I had an interest in commodities because I had some experience there. I had an interest in real estate because, that's a big part of farming. So I didn't know what I was going to do, but I went to, the U of A to graduate school with an open mind and just kind of was ready to try to figure out what the next chapter was going to be.
Yeah, that the journey you just took us down, a lot of people a lot of podcast guests that I have on here, they're coming from a corporate world and going into their own thing. And you were coming from a safer world. There is high risk. I'm not saying there's not what wasn't risk, but it was an environment that you were comfortable with. And now you're transitioning out into your own. And most of the time, I know my journey was that pivotal moment where I was absolutely convinced that this was the thing to do, right? My first business was a meat market, and I knew how to cut the meat. I knew how to hire the people, but I still had to pull the trigger. I had to do the thing. So when you made that commitment, kind of talk us through what life was like when you're like, okay, here I go. I'm doing it. And now I'm in. So walk through that. What was that like for you?
There were parts of it that were terrifying.
Yeah.
And as I look back on it, and as I look back on the 20 years I've been in the commercial real estate business, these are probably not the things you should say about yourself, but I think, resilience and just kind of just grit and a desire not to fail have helped me immensely through all these processes. Because I got to the U of A, if you gave me an IQ test, I would say I've scored pretty well. And if you gave me standardized tests, like I've always been really good at taking standardized tests. So I was never that great a student, but I could test well, and I felt like I was intelligent enough. I had enough confidence I kind of just eased my way through undergrad, but I never really got pushed. Well, when I got into graduate school, I really didn't even know how to study in undergrad. I didn't have to learn because I kind of could listen and comprehend it and take the test. And I didn't make great grades, but I made good enough grades to get by. Well, I just basically just cut loose from this safety net, as you talk about. Like, it wasn't a complete safety net, but there was some comfort around it. And I was in the MBA program at the U of A, and my first finance test, I studied for like 6 hours, which to me was, a lot. More than I'd ever studied for any test. And I made like a 72, I think. And I was just like, oh my goodness. Like, what am I gonna do? Like, I've got no backup plan. Like, I have a little bit of money, but not much. It's like, I'm kind of all in here, and a 72 isn't gonna get it done. And it was a seminal moment. I remember I've got a buddy, Brent Robinson, who's still around up here. We talk from time to time, but he was a little better at finance than me, and we were friends in the program. I said, man, I got a problem. Like, I can't make a C in this class. Like, I'm barely making a C. He goes, well, let me help you. And we just, I just basically went to the library and didn't leave and started. And I don't know what I graduated with my MBA program, 3.2 or 3.3 or something like that. But I just kind of was in a moment where you had to make a decision of, are you going to be successful or not? And, sometimes you just got to grab yourself by the bootstraps and just go.
Yeah, perseverance and determination. All entrepreneurs are rooted in that. So let's move to the next phase. Now you're out in the world. You've made the move to commercial real estate. I don't want you to reveal what your strategy is about real estate, but what I want you to do is talk a little bit about getting a deal and how do you move through, how do you push through to grow the business? Did you strategize? How did you get started from just getting one deal to trying to get to where, okay, I think I'm going to make it here. What was
I
that
wouldn't
like?
say there was a real refined strategy. My strategy has always been more along the lines of um, aligning with people that
Mhm.
I think can help me be successful, more so than having an actual kind of business plan to help me be successful. So, out of graduate school, I went to work for a guy named David Dallas, who David had an appraisal license. He had worked at the commercial real estate department for Walmart. He had worked for the Gap and Banana Republic. He had a pretty broad set of commercial real estate experience. And at that point in time, and this is a big part of the business now. It wasn't as big, or at least I wasn't as aware of it. And I think a lot of Arkansas wasn't as aware of it over the past 10 or 20 years, but basically pooling other people's money to go do commercial real estate deals. But David had some relationships, and he was long story short, buying out parcels in front of Walmart supercenters and building shopping centers. And my job was to lease those. And we were leasing them in South Dakota and California and Colorado, and there were about 20 of them. And so I got into the business by, following him and leasing shopping centers, and ancillary to that, or on a parallel track, learning the commercial real estate market in Northwest Arkansas, and just trying to put together brokerage deals locally. So that was kind of the start of my evolution into the commercial real estate business in Northwest Arkansas.
Yes, you didn't use this word, so I'm going to put words in your mouth. You were talking about strategic alliance with him, and it's a referral business. Yeah, so a lot of service providers, that's what they live on: doctors, lawyers, accountants. Me as a consultant, we all live on referrals. And in my experience, the foundation of referrals or strategic alliances is trust. So talk a little bit about what that looks like in your world as far as trust and as far as building relationships or networking, if you will. But networking and strategic alliances are completely different. But the level of trust is completely different. So as you've grown your business, what does that look like? How do you help build trust with your strategic partners?
Yeah, I'm trying to think about how to go at that. I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, trust is a critical part of this business, and I think the fact that I've been pretty good at building it is a big part of why I've been successful, why we've been successful as a firm. For me, it goes back to Pocahontas and small town, and the small town, who you can trust and who you can't. And your reputation is kind of all you got. So I've just grown up having a high importance or a big concern about what people thought of. I think one of the things about the commercial real estate business is you're kind of a people pleaser. Like you want people to like you. Like there's this need to make people happy and to help them. And I don't want to say that like it's a weakness, but sometimes it even can be like a weakness. But for me, like I want to be this people pleaser. I care about what people think about me. Sometimes maybe more than I should. But I came into this, I think my background in a small town helped. I came into this business looking at Northwest Arkansas as just a bigger small town. I have I put a very, very high importance on, doing what you say, and saying what you mean. And I really don't particularly care for salespeople. I don't like being sold. I don't like somebody trying to convince me. So my approach to this business, it's kind of multi-layered too. We really didn't talk much about auctions, but I grew up, around a lot of auctions because, farm equipment, farms themselves, like big transactions happened a lot of times through auctions. Well, with an auction, you don't really get to phone a friend or, convene a group and be like, hey, what do we think? Like you're up there bidding against a guy, sometimes for hundreds of thousands of dollars, sometimes for millions of dollars. And like, you better have confidence in what you're doing in that moment because you've got to make a decision right then. I look at the business like the commercial real estate business like that. Like if I'm going to advise, I'm not gonna help you sell your aunt's house. I'm not gonna help you buy. I could name a million properties that people try to act like they can help with that I'll be pretty quick to tell you I don't know anything about them. But if you want me to help you buy a shopping center or an industrial building or a commercial real estate building or a office building, I've been a commercial real estate generalist. This market has grown to the point where it's now bigger than it was when I started. And now you really need a commercial real estate specialist. Like these guys in our office now, I'm saying, hey, you need to only do industrial, or you need to only do office, or you need to only do retail, because you can't know enough information about every market segment to be great and really, really wise about the decisions you're making. So I think back, I hope I'm not rambling too much.
No.
But I think about it like an auction. So you need to know enough about your area of expertise where you can advise people like quick. Like you don't have to go check it's okay to go check your notes, but you don't need to be guessing about the advice you're giving people. Because as a commercial real estate broker, we get paid a lot of money. To me, as a kid coming from a farming business, when I saw some of these fees, I was like, oh, holy cow. Like I was almost embarrassed by them a little bit. It's like, how do I look at people with a straight face and go, well, I just made $100,000 on that deal or whatever it was. And so I set out with the goal of, I don't like salespeople. So I shouldn't say I don't like salespeople, but I don't like being sold. And so I didn't want people to have that impression of me trying to sell them anything. I wanted to be an expert. I wanted to make sure that when someone was at a closing table and they saw the line item of the check that I was getting, if it was a big one, I wanted them to look at me and go, well deserved, man. Like you made us more money than that check. Like you've created more value for us than what that check cost. Because I mean, one of the things I have this like imposter syndrome about some of the fees in this business. Like you got to get paid. But the reality is we swing at so many deals and miss that when you hit the big ones, the checks are pretty big. And some people go, oh man, that's a lot of money. My clients, I think, say, oh, that's a lot of money. But Clinton, I'm glad you were involved because you've made us a lot more than that check. So I've gone all over the place, but it ties back to trying to be truly an expert, not trying to do everything, just trying to be really good at a segment of the market, which I've done. I've almost, I think I really built my business by trying to talk people out of deals. Like if you'd have come to me out and said, hey, I've got an idea on this shopping center. I want to buy this retail center. What do you think? I'd be like, man, okay, I like it, but we need to be worried about X, Y, and Z. Let's go peel back the layers on that onion and see, is that a real concern? I would find all the reasons not to do the deal. And then if we can get past those, and it's like, okay, let's go get it. Whereas a lot of brokers would get big eyes at big dollars and say, oh yeah, let's go buy this thing. And they'd try not to address the bad things. And I was quick to try to address the bad things. And so it built trust. And, I think for me, Northwest Arkansas is a small town. I mean, I went to college for 4 years up here. People knew me. They watched me, I think, as I got into business, and, I try to do what I say I'm going to do, and that gets around.
Yeah. Just to kind of stay on this path of trust, and we need to wrap it up. But what I do want to say, this is what I heard in that message. I heard competency, I heard character, I heard consistency, and also heard compassion.
Yeah, compassion, a real desire to create value for the people that you're helping.
Yep.
And the compassion may be part of it. So I lived through 2008, and there's a gentleman, and I'll try to be vague enough, but he had basically invested, he had a distinguished career, military career. Like, he was the kind of guy, like, people should and did admire. And he'd invested his money with a guy up here that was not a great operator and lost basically every bit of it. And through 2008, 2009, 2010, there were some stories like that where people would show up in my office and they're like, man, I'm in this terrible situation. I've lost all this money. And I would just think that's like the last thing I want to do. There's no commission in the world for me worth giving somebody advice, even if I did it unintentionally. Like, I really want to give people advice that puts them in a position to be successful. And I can't imagine being in a situation where they would circle back to me at some point in the future and go, oh man, Clinton, you helped me buy that thing and I lost $2 million. Like, I'm not interested in living with that on my conscience. And knock on wood, I don't think I've got any stories like that.
Yeah. This has been fantastic. So if somebody that's listening to this and they want to contact you and they're interested in something to do with commercial real estate, how do they find you? Where are you? Website, phone number? Where?
You can just Google, Clinton Bennett Commercial Real Estate in Northwest Arkansas. I'm pretty easy to find. And my company's called Bennett Commercial Real Estate. We're located in Rogers. We work primarily in Northwest Arkansas. We do some work in other parts of the state, but we pretty much stay focused here in Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah, I've seen your sign. There's some building in was it Greenland?
Greenland, yeah.
Right there on 49.
Comments about that sign.
Yeah. I've got a daughter that's a freshman at the University of Arkansas, so we've been going up there regularly.
But one of the things I'll say too that ties back to the whole conversation. If somebody's listening to this and they've got a question, I think a lot of times they're intimidated to call a commercial real estate broker because they think a commercial real estate broker is going to try to say, hey, sign this contract and let me represent you. I enjoy people. I enjoy commercial real estate. If somebody's got a question and they want to just pick my brain, I'm happy to talk about commercial real estate. I'll do it informally. They don't have to pay me, or if the relationship builds, great. But if not, and they just want to chat about commercial real estate, feel free to give me a call.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, thank you very much for being on the show today.
You bet. I appreciate you having me. I've enjoyed it.
Right.
Thanks for tuning in to Bring Home the Bacon. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review to stay inspired and keep bringing home the bacon. We'll see you in our next episode.